Hi, my friends. Welcome. This is the Back to Me podcast, and this is Heather, and I am super excited that you're here. You are going to hear some tips and some tricks and some ideas to help you live your happiest and healthiest self. I call it Back to Me because when you are taking care of yourself, back to me, then you can take better care of others, and we can all make the world a better place. This is Wellness Your Way, and I am super happy that you're here. Hello, my friend. Welcome. It's awesome to not see you again. This is Heather. This is the Back to Me podcast, and we are in 2025 now. Shocking that we're in 2025. Who remembers like 2000 when we were all partying because the world was going to end, right? So today, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk to Deborah Heiser. Heiser?
Yeah.
Yay. About mentorship and all of these things. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you for having me on your show. I'm so thrilled to be here.
So interesting. I was reading about all of the things that you know and that you do. And I was like, wow, she's got stuff happening here. But I like to start with what brought you to write this book, The Mentorship Edge, but a little bit of your history and journey to this place that you are now.
Oh, sure. So this was not a planned journey. Like most of us, I've done a few things and I got here through meeting people and having questions and just following those questions. And so I started out as a research psychologist, studying everything we don't want to ever have, like frailty, dementia, depression. And someone said to me at a dinner party at a conference, what do we have to look forward to as we get older? And I was stumped and I didn't have an answer. And it was my aha moment to look at what was I really doing? Was I putting a Band-Aid on our futures and my own? So I started to look at our emotional journey as we age. And that's when I fell upon a lot of the research that's been done for a long time but hasn't been highlighted, which is midlife and older is when we really take off emotionally in a positive way. And that kickoff period is in midlife when we hit a stage called generativity. And that's where we want to give back to others without expecting anything in return. And that sounds like, well, how could that be so great? But it's our way of saying, hey, all those boxes I checked all of those years mean something. I matter in the world. The world wouldn't be the same without me in it. I made an impression. There's a footprint here. And I decided to look at mentorship because if we look at the ways we can give back, it's really volunteering, mentoring, and philanthropy. And mentorship is the only one that you're giving a bit of yourself, that's a lasting thing of yourself. So that could be my values. It could be, a form of my expertise. We see this sort of thing in our traditions and in our holidays and things like that get passed down generation to generation. And so when I got started looking at mentorship, something really surprised me. And that was that mentors were having a hard time finding mentees. We all know that mentees have a hard time finding mentors, but I was shocked to know that our top 1% of leaders in their fields didn't have access to mentees. And I was floored. So the mentor project was started with a few people just to see if we could match people up and make some magic. It's mentor focused. And it did phenomenally well. We're in our 5th year. We've just in 2024, at the point before November, we had reached more than $2 million of mentorship hours that we had given away for free. And so the Mentorship Edge book was born out of all of that and what we learned and what the research shows about mentorship and how we should all be really engaging in it all the time.
That's so cool. And it's so interesting that you were your role was initially all the bad things about aging. I'm like, wow, what a bummer that would be.
Yes,
And it is
exactly.
that is a huge wake up call. Well, what's good? You're like, oh, right.
It was
Well,
yes, it's such a natural thing for us to think that as we get older, we have a downward we get on a downward slide into our future, which ends in death. And that's scary for all of us. And putting a band-aid on that is not helping any of us feel better about it. And we think of our lives as a physical journey, and it's really not. Because if anyone in midlife or older thinks back to when they were younger, they would not trade their reading glasses to run faster. They would not trade, some of the things that they can't do as well as they could when they were younger for the wisdom and the feeling of, yes, I know who I am. There's a comfort level that we hit that we wouldn't trade for any physical, thing that we've maybe lost a little of in our midlife.
well, it's just interesting how many people say, wow, I wish that I was this smart or experienced when I was that age and I wouldn't have made that stupid mistake. But at the same time, you have to make those mistakes to get the wisdom. It's like this
Yeah.
catch 22. And so it's called generative, is that stage that people hit?
Yes, it's generativity, and a lot of
Generativity.
people mistake it for generosity.
Hmm.
And the difference between, just to explain a little bit of generativity, it was a term coined by Eric Erickson decades ago. And a lot of people have researched it. Dan McAdams out of Northwestern has been researching it a lot. And people have looked at it as a midlife transition stage kind of a thing that we hit. And really, when you think of generativity, think of generating something from yourself and pushing it out into the world, into others. Whereas generosity, if someone's generous, they might give me an extra scoop of ice cream. I eat it and then it's gone.
Right.
It's not reciprocal where I scratch your back, you scratch mine. When I'm being generative, I'm saying, hey, Heather, I see you could use this knowledge or information. I'm going to give this to you, and you take it and incorporate it into your world, and a little piece of me lives on in you. It's generating something new outside of yourself.
Right. Do you find that, so you're saying midlife? I find midlife keeps moving. 40 is the new 20 or something. So when you speak midlife, I guess it's a variable depending on the person, but is there a common age range that this starts to happen, or are there some people
40,
that it never happens?
40 is really midlife when it
Is it?
starts.
Well,
And people will say, well, some people, they'll say, when is adulthood? Well, maybe it's later because people go to college and they live at home longer, but it doesn't matter. You finish being a toddler when you finish being a toddler, even if you feel like you're still a toddler,
right,
you aged out of that. The same thing we still have our physical development, and where we are emotionally doesn't always fit with that. So I feel like I can do a lot that I'm in my mid 50s. I really truly feel like I'm in my 30s in many ways. But that doesn't mean that I'm not, that I'm in my 30s. It means that I feel really good. I don't feel the physical aspects of my decline. Like I don't notice my reading glasses. I have to wear them, or I can't see. And I never had to wear glasses. But we forget about those things that we are sort of just accepting as we go on. So no, it doesn't really change as a developmental psychologist. That's what I will say. But emotionally, we have flexibility with everything. And so those numbers may feel different than they were presented decades ago.
right. And so the mentor project that you were working on, was it all business people, like business leaders, or do you find that there's people out there, I guess I'm thinking about people out there who have things to share that they might think, oh, but I, why would someone want to listen to me, even though they have that wisdom and knowledge, right?
So yeah, we have from astronauts to artists and
Cool.
everything in between. And they really are and I just want to emphasize, not that these people have this expertise, but the fact that people, like, can you imagine, people want to meet astronauts. They want to meet well-known artists. And they are having the same problem that others are having with getting connected. But people will think, hey, I have nothing to offer. And I've heard this all the time. I'm a teacher. I'm a police officer. I am a homemaker. I have nothing to offer. And I'm like, are you kidding me? All of those values that are passed down in traditions through the family, who do you think does that?
Right.
And we can think of that as valueless because we take it for granted. But remove one of those holidays, remove one of those traditions, and it's a feeling of emptiness. That's what creates humanity, is that connection that we get from somebody else who's mentoring us in our personal development. So all of the values that you hold at any point in your life didn't come out of a box. You didn't just grab it out of the air and insert it into yourself. It came from somebody who passed that on to you. And the power in that is unbelievable because when we think, when we have children, people say, what do you want for them when they get older? Everyone says, I want them to be happy. Well, part of that is that you're instilling the values and the traditions and other things in them that make them happy as they get older, that make them feel connected. So there's no one who's not an expert in something.
Right. Do you think this just came to me when you were talking about family values? And do you think that part of the greater need for this, and maybe I'm assuming there's a greater need for this now, but a greater need for this now is the separation that has started to happen in we used to have communities and closer knit ties, and we know everything about everybody, but we're not connected the way we were before.
Well, I'll say two things to that. One is one of the things that I noticed before, say, the whole tech surge that we've had is that we had a loss of civic engagement. And
Mm.
civic engagement and generativity are tied together. Civic engagement is where, when you're younger, we had candy stripers in the US where, you would go when you're in high school and volunteer in a hospital
I
and
was a candy striper.
yay, good. See, look at you, civic engagement. It could be anything, though, and that makes you think of the world outside of yourself. And we're very self-involved as teenagers. And to get somebody outside of themselves to see that the world is a bigger place and that you can connect in that way is invaluable. So then we went through a period of time where there wasn't a lot of civic engagement. But now there's a new surge of tech engagement. And we can say, oh, I don't feel as connected. But here you are offering what I would consider modern mentoring. You have a podcast. There's somebody who can find this information and get guidance.
Right.
We all do that. We get online and we look at videos and we listen to podcasts and we do things. And we're able to get connected in a way that's different, but it does make our world a little bit bigger. It takes us outside of ourselves.
Right. So there's always two sides to everything, right? So
Yeah,
it's
true.
like yes and yes, yes and yes. And I guess part of what happens when you're in a live in real life community is you aren't curating your own engagement. You aren't
Yes.
deciding, oh, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to listen to grandpa. I'm going to listen to this person. But when you're online, you're like, I don't like that video. I don't like their voice. I'm going to watch this one. I'm going to watch this one. And I guess we won't know the ultimate outcome until we're down the road and look back and think, wow, what's that? What were the goods and bads of all that? So
You're right.
yeah. So the book is talking about the building of the project, or it's talking about what's the book
It's
about?
really talking about mentorship and really how we're all engaged in it all the time. We just don't acknowledge it.
Hmm.
And what mentorship is and what it isn't. Mentorship is not coaching. Coaching is not mentorship. The difference between all of those and hierarchical versus lateral. And also personal development, which is what we all need, and work development and how those can look. I give a lot of vignettes about how mentorship has saved lives, to how it makes us feel useful and resilient, and looking at it from a mentor perspective, which most of the time is seen as a nameless, faceless sort of, Charlie Brown's teacher that's like mwah, mwah, mwah in the background. We never see that person.
Right.
So it's really highlighting, that individual. But the main point is that we all should be acknowledging when we are mentoring, and we're all doing it. We just don't realize it. And like that person that you said helped you with Canva, you liked what she had, she taught you how to do it, you then incorporated it into your world. Your world is now a little bit different. That
Right.
was mentorship. She didn't have to do that. You didn't pay her. These are the kinds of things that we engage in. And if we realize what we're doing, it makes us want to do it more. And it makes us want to reach out more often because we know that we can be vulnerable with someone and say, hey, I don't know something. Can you show me? Or can you teach me? Or
Right.
we'll pay attention more to some of those values that are passed down. And it feels better to me every time I make my grandmother's recipes from her handwritten recipe cards, because I realize that that's a piece of her that I'm engaging in when I'm doing it. It makes us feel better.
Right.
That's what
Yeah.
it's about.
That's amazing. And it's so interesting that the mentors were having trouble finding mentees, because I know I feel like people are always searching for help. And there's that disconnect of, you're both kind of lost and looking for each
Yeah.
other. But for the people who, you made a comment that, mentorship's not coaching. And I mean, I know what my thoughts are on, but how do you see those two as different for people who aren't familiar?
If you're getting paid to mentor, you're not a mentor.
Hmm.
That's the first thing I'm going to say. And coaches will always say, but I mentor while I'm coaching. No, you don't. If you're getting paid, you're not. You're coaching. Is that a negative? No, they're two different things. Mentoring requires five things. It requires generativity. What you experienced, someone said, hey, I want to give you this. I don't expect anything in return. It'll make me happy to know you're using it and you like it. Generating something for myself into the world. It also requires intrinsic motivation. That is the desire not to do something for pay. If you read books because you enjoy it, no one has to say, hey, 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 have you read? I'm going to give you a gold star if you read today. It's the same. The idea that I like to tell people is, if would you volunteer at a soup kitchen? And people usually say yes. I say, okay, would you volunteer your time at Starbucks? And they say no. It's the
Right.
same exact thing. You're giving out food and beverage to hungry, thirsty people, but it feels different when you have an extrinsic motivator, which is money, pay, awards, or rewards. And that's kind of where the difference is with coaching and mentoring.
Right.
You also need to have a meaningful connection. You have to be able to care about the person that you're working with in both directions, mentor and mentee. You have to have trust. You're not going to go to a boss or somebody that you feel completely disconnected from and tell them you don't know how to do something. It's going to make you feel like, oh, are they going to not give me a raise if you're at work? Or is that person in my community going to think badly of me? And you'll also have to have a goal. So those are the things that you need for mentorship. And when I distinguish it between coaching and mentorship, usually it's intrinsic motivation.
Right.
That you're getting paid.
Yeah. And I mean, there's all ways to, I like the Starbucks example actually, because that really cements it for people. Oh, right. Same, but different.
Yeah.
And, um, and I think about, so mentorship, and it's different than volunteering as well. Like my husband does lots of volunteer work. He actually delivers food for the food bank on his bicycle
Wow,
for
that's
for
so
4 days
cool.
a week, which really is his like the thing that lights him up and the thing that excites him, because he knows he's helping these people. But it's different because it's not like, it is him, but it's like he's not producing the food and giving it to them. So it's like that difference between the volunteering and the mentoring. And when people are when so how can I phrase this? When people feel like they need something, how do you find that they don't think of mentorship first and they go somewhere else, or what makes people think of mentorship?
I think mentorship has been made into a burden for both mentor and mentee. It's
Mm.
a box they have to check. It's thought of as reciprocal, and it's thought of in ways like that they feel such pressure to come in with the right questions and the right things to ask, and they want to look intelligent when they go in to ask something of someone. So it's really, we've gotten mentorship to the point where we use the term so often in and misuse it in so many ways. And we've put it into the workplace so that it's a burdensome interaction. Go meet with your mentor, as though then you go meet with this person and you better come up with something that you're going to talk about. And that person better be giving you wise, sage advice. Because if not, it's going to be a failed interaction.
And you probably didn't get to choose them.
Right. And
Right.
none of that is mentorship.
Right.
It just isn't. It's like saying, okay, Heather, you are going to be best friends with the next person that walks in the room. And no matter what you say, that is going to be your best friend. And if it doesn't work out, you are both failures. Like,
Right.
that's terrible. Who wants that? No one.
And yeah, I mean, you understand why they wanted to bring mentorship into the workplace, but they approached it like business, right?
Yes.
We'll put it on the schedule, we'll mark the calendars, we'll get it done, which is just doesn't feel like a great approach.
It's like saying, I'm going to pay all of our volunteers. Then they're not volunteers. And, what we have to do is to think of mentorship as not a potential monetizing factor in a workplace. And we also, which then makes people think that, well, I'm not engaging in mentorship in my personal life because I don't monetize anything with grandma as she passes on her wisdom to me. You know, there's this really wrong take on it where we're thinking of all of our interactions with people that we love and care about in our communities, in our homes, that if we're getting knowledge or information from them, it's that we sat down, we were like, okay, tell me the information I need.
Right.
And there's some kind of like force between two people. And so really it's happening organically all the time. We just have to remove all those pressures that we put on ourselves with thinking that it is something that is going to be an aha moment, that is something, it's not a failure option with this. There's no failure in mentorship. Um, and we are literally organically doing it so often that if we could only acknowledge it, we would do it more and want to do it more. Just like soup kitchen, I would go volunteer it, and most of us would, and feel amazing about it, and then say, I want to do it again and again and again. And that's how we should be feeling about mentorship, as opposed to, I'm nervous to do it, I might fail.
What if they ask me the wrong question? What if I
Yeah,
don't have the answer?
right.
And I do find, I think because business was using it, I don't know how many are using it now, but I feel sometimes I call it the Hollywoodization. It's like everything we do has to be epic with explosions
Yeah.
and angels singing. And why can't we just be a couple people having a conversation and a coffee, right?
Hmm.
And there's also been that push that almost, and maybe this is only since I became an entrepreneur that I noticed that everything has to be monetized.
Yes.
Relationships shouldn't be monetized.
No.
This is not why we have relationships. But I find in some industries, there's that push that, well, someone wanted to have coffee with me. Uh huh. You're like, okay, to talk to me. Okay. Are you going to talk to them? Well, what if they want? Like, what if they
Exactly.
just want to have a coffee with you?
I
Right.
just read something from someone who wrote about how we should be looking at ways in which we can get something out of being a volunteer. Something that's concrete, not the good feeling that we get, that we're sort of chumps for doing, wanting that. And I think that is the business model that has been sort of brainwashing people to think that being a good person or wanting to engage with others is being in some way a failure, to have accumulated something. But I'll tell you what happens when we think about it that way. There are two things. One is, imagine giving a gift to somebody and they open it up, and how you feel when you've just given them the gift they've always wanted. That lasts. That's a feeling that you can just feel right here in your stomach.
Right.
Now imagine, um, here you are getting ready to go mentor somebody, and there's an expectation, or volunteer, or do something, an interaction, and there is an expectation that you better be doing something reciprocal, or you've just been taken advantage of. It
Right.
shifts that thinking into something where you can't trust the person that you're with. And if somebody comes to ask you something, are they going to steal my idea and run away with it? It shifts us into a really paranoid person in a
Yeah.
way that we should not be thinking of. It really disturbed me to think that people really need to think about how you're going to get something from every interaction that you're involved in.
Right. And
And
I don't see it very often, but when I see it, I just think, wow, like that's so sad.
it is. And that's why I wanted to write the book, because I wanted to dispel a lot of that and to say, look, you're doing this, enjoy it, because there's no greater gift. The example is Ebenezer Scrooge. On paper, he had everything. He was a self-made guy. He lived in a mansion. He had servants taking care of his needs, but he was miserable. He had a reciprocal life. It wasn't until he became generative, literally in the show, this is how it works in real life, and
Right.
gave back to Tiny Tim and his family and Bob Cratchit, that he felt joy. He didn't get anything back from them. So when you remove that piece, that reciprocal piece, or that feeling that I better get something back, or you know, I'm losing out in some way, the only person losing is you.
Right. And oh my gosh, and you don't have to take that to the bank because because I just, I have this, I know it's a naive vision of the world where everyone's happy and has what they need, but it's my fantasy life. And
I'm here in that fantasy life with you.
right. Yeah, we're in this fantasy life. Where
But it
is
is a reality, Heather. It really is. I can look around and say, I've worked with people at the end of life. One of my first book that I had was on palliative care
Mm,
and, end of life care. There wasn't a single person at the end of life that was like, I am so glad that I had reciprocal relationships. The happiest people are the people who reflected and said, you know what? Wow, I have this wonderful friend that I was close with my whole life. Or it was always the people and the connections that mattered. It was never what a beautiful home they had or anything else. It was literally 100% about the connections. And so I think we are living in a reality with that. We just need to shift some of the popular thinking that's been written about in business.
right. And you don't have to wait till the end of your life to have those realizations,
Right.
right? There's no need at all. What was your first book, the other book called?
It's a long one. It's spirituality and palliative care. So it was looking at all the ways that you could insert. This was more than 20 years ago,
Hmm,
looking at how we can insert things into a person's end of life situation to make them feel better. This was when palliative care was thought of that you were like trying to kill the patient. And, they really did think that. They
oh
thought
my
that if you
goodness.
acknowledged that you were at your end of life, that they would not give you treatment or things like that. And so the first book that I did was really to say, no, 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 we're trying to make sure that people, when they're at the end of life, that what we were seeing is that people were not coming into the room. They were afraid. They didn't know how to act around someone who was nearing the end of their life. And so the person would be alone. So
Right.
we had all sorts of things that we were giving as interventions to stop that from happening. We're not there anymore. People are fine with this. But at that time, it was sort of cutting edge. And
Wow.
um, the book is still out, but I've moved on beyond that to looking at more positive things that we can do well in advance of that time period.
Right. And where can they find your book?
Anywhere you buy books.
Oh,
So Amazon, in terms of this book, there's a QR code. You can go right there. And if you look up on Amazon, you'll find the other one too. The other
right?
one's more academic, though. It's not like
Yeah.
a beach read.
So for people who are listening to the audio version, don't worry, I'll put a link in the show notes in case you can't. You're like, QR code. I don't see any QR code, but it's all good. So fascinating. I just think the world of mentorship has so much potential if it's recognized and people just embrace it and just dive in, right?
Yeah,
And you will feel so much better. So, like, I mean, there's that saying on purpose. It's better to give than to receive. It's not because it's
yeah.
a good or a bad. It's just you feel better, right? You
You
feel
do.
so good giving someone something, which is why I hate giving gift cards. Like,
I know you
right?
miss out on that, them opening their eyes and seeing what you gave.
Exactly.
You're so right about that. That is such a missed opportunity.
Yeah. Oh, these kids who just want cash. Listen, let us give you nice presents.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that's what we really do all wanna just give people gifts. Although
Right?
you could see somebody perhaps opening a gift of cash and saying, "Yay," and seeing them get excited.
Yeah, that would be okay.
It's the
That I'd be okay
in-person
with that.
part.
Right. So, just honoring your time, my friend. Thank you for joining us. But before we head off and let people take stock of their mentoring and their thoughts on mentoring, do you have final words of wisdom for the audience?
I do. I'd like to tell everyone to look to your left and look to your right. You're looking at mentors. They're next to you, and you are also looking at mentees. So either give or receive from everyone around you.
Amazing. So good. Thank you so much, Deborah. That was awesome. It was
Thank you
such
for
a
having
pleasure
me.
talking to you.
You too.
That time went so fast.
It did.
Oh my goodness. So, friends in podcast land, um, do that. Look around and see how you influence the people around you and how they're influencing you because this is how we make the world awesome. We just keep making it better, right? Share this with someone that you think would be fine, that's interesting. Make sure you send a like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you go click out Deborah's website because that's going to be there too because I forgot to ask you what it was, but I'm going to put it up there. And have an amazing week. I will see you again soon. Take care. Hi, my friend. Thanks so much for listening to this entire podcast. If you found it useful and you're like me and you like helping others, please feel free to share this. Just give it a like, give it a comment. If you found something useful in it, there's a chance that someone else will find something useful as well. Also, if you have any questions at all, I can absolutely help and I would love to help. You can email me at heather@prosperityflowcoaching.com. If you want more of this awesome content, you can follow me on Instagram, Heather Stewart Coaching. You can follow me on Facebook, Prosperity Flow Coaching. And I have a personal request. I want to help as many people as I can with these podcasts. And if you could give me a review, hopefully a good one, if you could share, if you could send this out into the world, I would truly appreciate it. I hope you have an amazing day. And I hope that you find your way to wellness by getting back to me. Take care, my friend.